Imagine being taken from your home, from everything you've ever known, your loved ones, your pets, and never being able to see them again. Foster care is a system that children are placed into when their biological parents or guardians can't or are unwilling to properly care for the child with food, shelter, safety, and any other life necessities. Now, foster parents are not related to the child by any means, but they are recruited by government-ran agencies from a list of eligible, licensed caretakers that live in the area where the child is removed from. My claim is that children should not be forced to stay with relatives. I believe that a foster home is sufficient and can give a child what they need for a happy life. Parents and guardians should not be able to reclaim their children once placed into the foster care system. About 8 years ago, my family brought home a little baby girl named Sophie. We raised Sophie for 18 months and pursued adoption. Both of her parents were arrested multiple times for drugs and lost custody of all three children. Her grandfather started to show interest in her for the first time after her mother lost visitation rights overall. Sadly, the biological family won the custody battle because the judge said, quote, "It was better for the child." I have not seen Sophie since then. In first grade, I had a best friend named Petey Roberts. Petey was involved in foster care, but did not make it well known to other people. Petey came from a very rough home. His father was convicted of manslaughter, and both of his parents had multiple drug charges. He returned home to his biological parents while we were still in school. Many times I remember Petey telling me that he was terrified of his biological father. Now, as a first grader, I didn't think much of anything when he would tell me this. I was unable to understand how a child could be afraid of their own parent. Tragically, less than a year after Petey's return home, he was shot and killed by his 13-year-old brother. According to Child Welfare Gateway, on September 30th, 2012, there were an estimated 399,546 children in foster care. Out of all those children, 43% had a goal of reunification with their parent, meaning they had hoped and dreamed to be reunited with their parents. 24% had a goal of adoption, 9% had a goal of long-term foster care, 15% had not yet had a case plan goal established, 3% had a goal of guardianship, and 5% had a goal of living with other relatives. A social worker named Richard MacArthur said, quote, "Although many have hopes of reunification, it quickly becomes a reality to those overseeing the process that is not always the best choice." End quote. Some more facts and statistics on foster care. Who was involved? 65% of foster children are under the age of 14. So those are very young kids in foster care homes. Developmental age spent within the system. Many times the situations have taken effect by the time the children is removed from their home. There are currently 117,000 children waiting to be adopted, says social worker Richard MacArthur. The children's length of stay, majority are involved for at least a year. Now, 17% are involved for 5 years or more, 28% 2 to 4 years, 20% 1 to 2 years, 31% 1 month to a year, and 4% is less than 1 month. The effects of foster care. Staying with the biological families can be just as detrimental as being in a foster care home. Many times it is due to the lateness of involvement from the system. Faith Hill was actually adopted herself. She learned later in her lifetime that she was adopted. She spent 3 years searching to find her birth mother. She said, quote, "I was adopted into this incredible home, a loving, positive environment. Yet I had this yearning, this kind of darkness that was also inside me." End quote. Now, the opposing viewpoint, some people would say it may be better for the child to remain with the biological parents. If the situation is bad enough to remove the child, they should not be forced to return to the same situation. That's not fair to the child, by any means. It should absolutely not be based on family ties. As many people always say, blood does not necessarily have to mean family, and family does not necessarily have to mean blood. Foster parents undergo training and they obtain a license and they have a house study. So it's not like children are just thrown into these houses to these random people. These people train and work and pay and do things over and over again. They learn how to become good parents. Children are placed in the foster care system because of abuse, whether it be physical, sexual, or just neglect. The government is required to make efforts from removing the child from their biological parents. So why not put the effort into finding a loving home with suitable living conditions? The personal effects. It takes years to recover, mentally and physically, from losing a child. Petey's foster mom, Melissa, said, quote, "You forget what you want to remember, and you remember what you want to forget." How would you have felt if you were Sophie or Petey? Staring down the barrel of a gun, taken away from your loved ones. These kids had no choice but to do what they were told. One day you might have the chance yourself to foster or adopt a child. Will you let it continue, or will you help to break the cycle? In conclusion, a child should not be forced to stay with their relatives. Foster homes supply children with everything they could possibly need. Parents shouldn't be allowed to reclaim their child once in the foster care system. They were put in that system for a reason, and they need to stay there. Do your part. Break the cycle.